Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. My name is Erin Bury, and I'm going to introduce myself in a little bit once we get started. But for now, if you want to open the chat window and enter where you're joining from and maybe what your business is, that would be great. I'm going to be running through a presentation today. I'm going to keep an eye on the questions pane as I go. If I can manage answering questions and keeping an eye on those while presenting, then I will. And if not, then I'll just save time at the end. And you will be provided with, I'll mention this again after we officially start, but you will be provided with a one-pager after this that has all of the details and tools that I talk about today. So don't worry about scribbling to put down notes. I'll send everything through to you. The QuickBooks team will send everything through to you. And you can just worry about grabbing your lunch and a coffee or beverage of your choice and enjoying the talk. So I saw that we had people from all across Canada joining us. I'm actually in my bedroom in Prince Edward County, which is a wine region just a couple hours from Toronto. I'm living here full time and very grateful to have some outdoor space and fresh air. Prince Edward County is a summer destination, so in March and April it's typically not super busy anyway, so it's very easy for me to social distance on my runs. I see that we have Linda Chapman from New Brunswick, we have Roberto from Edmonton, we have Patrick from Victoria, BC, we have Alexandra from Lake Louise Medical Clinic. Thank you so much for everything you're doing on the front lines and in healthcare right now. So we truly do have, even with a few comments, we have a coast-to-coast group, which is awesome. So we're gonna wait just a couple minutes to get started. And so grab your coffee, grab your lunch, take a quick bio break, and we'll get started in just a couple minutes. I have my mug, which is very apropos, the boss. Whoops. There we go. You probably just saw my messy desktop. I'm telling you today how to use remote tools to run your business, not how to stay organized on your desktop. I could use some help on that, apparently. So if you're just joining now, we're getting started in just a couple minutes, 2 minutes now. Feel free to enter your name and where you're from in the chat windows. And as I go throughout the presentation, feel free to add questions in. Just as an FYI, you will be receiving a one-pager after this with all of the details that I talk about. So no need to be scribbling furiously as we go through this. Oh, we have a lot more messages on people and where they're from. Wow, lots of great folks here. We've got people from Brandon from Kitchener, Robert from Brampton. Robert, fun fact, I grew up in Georgetown, so neighbors too. Susan in Calgary. We've got folks from London, Winnipeg, Nelson, Prince George, Victoria. Amazing. Thank you everyone for joining. Welcome Kim and Sarah and Carol. Carol is saying there's no sound. We typically find if there's no sound, it may be an issue on your end if everyone else isn't hearing me okay. If anyone else can't hear me, let me know, but I do have the QuickBooks teams on standby to let me know if I do cut out completely for any reason. So maybe just try restarting your webinar and your GoToMeeting and seeing if you can join again. Folks, lots of Edmonton folks and Calgary folks here, which is great. Some Toronto people, Red Deer, Alberta, a couple people, which is very cool. Montreal, Alain, welcome. I lived in Montreal for 4 months last year doing the Founder Field Startup Accelerator program and got to experience all of the city's culture. And by culture, I mean bars and restaurants. You have a fantastic city. Suzanne Lanthier, Aaron Smith, Beverly, so many folks. Really, really glad to have you all here. So we're going to get started now because it's 1 o'clock. We have almost 400 people joining us so far, and we're expecting more. So welcome to today's session. Hopefully you have a bite to eat and a coffee, and we'll get started. Just as an FYI, We are going to be providing a one-pager after the session with all of the tools that I talk about. The QuickBooks team will follow up with those, so no need to scribble down notes. And as you can see on my slide here, you can enter questions for me at any time. I'm going to try to keep an eye on them, but they might go pretty quickly. So I'll leave time at the end for questions. So save up any questions you have or enter them in the chat, and we'll definitely leave time for those. We will wrap up by 2 p.m. If we have a lot of questions, I might go just a bit past 2 p.m. Eastern to answer some of those, but I know that most of you may have to drop off to your next meeting. So I will get started now. So today we're talking about leveraging digital tools to run your business remotely. And I wanted to start off by just launching a poll on what best describes you, whether you're leading a poll for or leading a remote team for the first time, or you already lead a remote team. So I'd love to hear your answers to that. But first, I will start with my background. So the poll's in progress. Okay, I'm excited to see all of your answers. So what's my background? Well, I've worked in digital companies for the past over a decade. I've worked in the startup space since 2007, both working in-house at startups and running my own agency, and also, working at BetaKit, the tech publication. So I've worked in the digital space for over a decade. I went to journalism school, but somehow ended up on the cover of Canadian Lawyer magazine. So I don't know how that happened, but I never thought I'd be running an estate planning company. I'm currently the CEO and co-founder of Willful, which helps Canadians easily create wills and power of attorney documents online. I started the company with my husband, so we are coworkers, and we also, of course, are working together while in social isolation. So that is very fun. So why am I talking to you about remote work? Well, it says here 66% of you are leading a remote team for the first time. While I'm really familiar with running, digital tools and running digital focused businesses, I'm also running a remote team for the first time. We've always had work from home, but never fully remote. But I've led digital teams for over a decade and implemented a lot of the tools that I'm going to talk about years and years ago, and have seen how they've been successful. I've used, digital tools for pretty much every facet of running a business, from HR to operations to, ongoing team culture and communication. And, I'm running a remote team right now located around Ontario. We've always had remote workers, either consultants or part-time workers at Willful, so it's not new to us to be dealing with people who aren't on site every day. But now I'm running a remote team with people located everywhere from North Bay to where I am in Prince Edward County to Toronto and beyond. So it's been a real experiment in going fully remote versus just using digital tools to run the day-to-day. So first, I just wanted to start out with the goals for running a remote team. What are we actually trying to do when we're talking about implementing these tools and tips for our teams? And to me, as a leader of a remote team, you have a few key goals. The first is to provide a way for team members to easily connect on various channels, not just on email, but on face-to-face platforms, on instant communication platforms, and just to stay connected with each other and with you. To ensure your team has a way to provide feedback and to capture and take the pulse of your team regularly. When you're running a remote team, you don't have the benefit of sitting in an office and taking the temperature of the team, seeing people's demeanor and how they're feeling. And especially during a time like this is not normal remote work conditions that we're in. Everyone is really struggling with things like mental health and anxiety, and also working from home with kids and all of those things. So, how does your team actually have a way to provide feedback on how that's going, and how are you checking in on them as people, but also on them as team members? Obviously, moving paper-based processes online, forgive my typo there, we don't have the luxury of sticking to paper processes right now. And to be honest, I think it's actually a good thing. I think it's forcing a lot of businesses who may have operated a little bit more traditionally, and it's pulling them into the digital sphere and giving team members a way to do everything online versus having to have any paper involved. And then finally, making virtual team culture a priority. It's not just about getting the work done, it's about having that same feeling of camaraderie and connection that you had when you were in person with your team. And finally, I think this one is something I already spoke to, really the final goal, which wouldn't exist for any of the, 34% of you said you already led a remote team before this happened, but whether or not you did lead a remote team, this is really about not just how do we work effectively remotely, it's how do I show up as a leader and show compassion and understanding during this time, knowing that there's so much uncertainty and that my employees are facing, their own personal challenges in addition to the challenge of getting my daily job done. So those are the goals to keep in mind as we run through this presentation, and all of the tools that I'm going to talk about are in service of helping to achieve these goals. So I'm going to go through a few different areas of your company, and in each of those, teams, whether it's HR and culture or, finance, I'm going to talk about a few tools, talk about how I'm using them and where I've really seen the benefits. If they have any sort of COVID pricing specials, I'll mention them. And then we'll get into some best practices and takeaways for remote workers. So the first tool I wanted to highlight, the other thing I should mention is I'll highlight when these are Canadian tools. I'm a big fan of supporting local whenever I can. So a lot of these tools are Canadian small businesses, and we should be trying to support Canadian small business whenever possible. So the first tool is Collage. Collage is an online HR platform. So for anyone who's been using, email or paper-based vacation request forms or employee onboarding forms, you don't really have that luxury right now. Collage is a really easy way to onboard and offboard employees and host employee data. So when you hire a new employee, you send them a link and they go in and enter all of their information, including their banking information to sync to your payroll provider. And using Collage, you can also provide, onboarding tools and training materials. So if you have training modules or employee handbooks, you can easily provide those as part of the onboarding experience without you having to replicate those or email them to every new employee who comes on. For your existing employees, I find the most useful part of it is managing and approving time off requests. So you can assign managers for each person, you can set the number of approval levels that you might need, and you can create really flexible time off policies. We have policies for volunteer days and personal days and vacation, and so you can go in the back end and set up a few of those policies, and it makes it really easy when someone's starting to just assign them to one of those policies, and it automates how much time they have left, and it also syncs with something like your payroll provider so that you know how many vacation days people have taken and what their vacation pay would be if they were to leave the company, which is really helpful. It's also just a really simple online solution. The pricing, I forget if it's $8 or $18 per month per employee, but it's pretty affordable. And it also has other features in it, things like managing performance reviews, sending out surveys to your team members, and other kind of team culture or operational tools, which is nice. We mostly use it for the time off feature. It does have a recruiting feature. Again, we don't use that part of it as well. We mostly just use it to host employee data, provide onboarding and training materials, and manage time off approvals, but it does have a pretty robust feature set. The other thing that you can do there, if you're a large team, we're a team of 9 people. So for us, company announcements really happen on Slack or, via email. But if you have a really large company and you wanted to send something out, you can also send company announcements from within Collage. The next tool is 15.5. I really like 15.5 because it allows you to take the pulse of your team. So 15.5 is a weekly survey tool. I used to use it when I ran a digital marketing agency. I used it for a few years, and really the goal was to unearth, I had joined this marketing agency and I really wanted to get a sense of where people's heads were at, how they were feeling on an ongoing basis, and what they needed, what the roadblocks were. And it's sometimes impossible, especially as you have a growing team, to have one-on-one touch points, meaningful one-on-one touch points with every single one of your employees on an ongoing basis. So 15-5 is a really great way to get the weekly pulse from your team without you having to be the person that's necessarily meeting with every single person. So the goal behind 15-5 is 5 questions that take 15 minutes to answer every week. You have the ability to customize all of the questions. The ones that they also have suggested questions if you don't want to pick. So on a weekly basis, we ask things like, how are you feeling this week? What are the biggest challenges that exist for you in the business right now? What's your biggest focus for the week and where can I help? What ideas do you have for the company? And especially because we're remote working right now, what tools, equipment, or software would help you do your job better during this time? You can obviously switch those questions up anytime so that they don't get stale. And 15-5 allows you to also say, ask a certain question once a month versus every week so that, you're not asking the same things all the time. We used to use this when we weren't remote working, but we had people working from home. And to me, it helped unearth a lot of great ideas, little things like we want a toaster oven for the office, and big things like, I don't sit next to X person and I feel isolated from the team, things that I would never have heard about otherwise. And it allows you to also pass up all of those answers. So you as the manager are only responsible for reviewing the surveys from your direct reports, but all of the managers below you can then pass up answers or comment and tag you in. So let's say, for example, someone requests something, you can actually show that you're listening by commenting and saying, great suggestion, I'm going to order that toaster oven for the office, easy peasy. Doesn't mean you have to act on all of the suggestions. We had someone who suggested that we do our annual company retreat in Iceland, which unfortunately was not very feasible. But I think it's a really great way just to at least show that you're listening. So you can review and comment on the answers. And even though you're remote, it allows you to have that, hey, how's it going? Check-in at least once a month. Now, 15-5 also is great for giving team kudos. So your employees can actually give shout outs to other people on the team, which is also just a nice way to have them connect and to give shout outs. And it also includes other features. We use it primarily for the ongoing surveying tools, but it also has a way to track your goals and your OKRs if anyone uses that framework, and to manage your one-on-ones. I'm going to talk in a few minutes about a tool called Soapbox that does that really well, but 15-5 also allows you to manage and set agendas for your one-on-one meetings with your employees. And the thing that I love about 15-5 is that they're offering the tool for free to businesses under 50 people until mid-June because of COVID. So I was going to sign up and pay, and then I saw this offer, and it makes me more likely to pay once the trial is over. So even if you're not sure if it's the right fit for you, there's really no harm in going there, signing up, and giving it a try. Okay, I just mentioned Soapbox. So Soapbox is a Toronto-based company. I really love what they're doing. They have a great team. We currently don't use it. I'm actually implementing it this week, but I've been assessing it for quite a while, and this seems like the perfect time to put it into action. I had a demo from their team though, so I can speak to all of the functionality. Really, this platform is designed for managers to effectively manage their teams, and it's also the perfect tool to provide some process around and accountability around meetings. I've seen a lot of tweets about people saying that they're actually having more meetings than usual right now. So if you're struggling to, make sure that there's solid agendas for meetings and making sure that action items are taken care of and documented, this could be a really good tool for you. So for one-on-ones, if you're a manager and you have regular one-on-ones with your team like I do, Soapbox allows you to create a shared ongoing agenda where your direct report can add items to that agenda for the next week's one-on-one as they come up and as they think of them. You can also be adding things in. So when it comes time for your one-on-one, you have already a pre-populated agenda of what to talk about. It's also great because the biggest challenge from one-on-ones is making sure that your direct reports know that you're taking action on the things that they brought up. So this allows you to track all of the action items from a meeting, and then it archives all of those agendas. So you can pop back to 3 weeks ago and say, hey, so-and-so, you mentioned that you were going to do XYZ as a follow-up. I haven't seen that yet. Can you let me know where that is? So it makes the accountability on both sides really, really clear and just helps you have better one-on-one meetings. And just for team meetings, it also really helps with organization. So I know we suffer from meetings without agendas, meetings that go over, you know, who's following up on what after a meeting happens. So Soapbox allows you to, again, create those shared agendas, not just for one-on-one that you might have, but also with larger teams. And to track those action items after. So everyone has accountability to see the agenda, to add to it, and to see what the action items are and follow up on them after. The basic version of Soapbox is free. So again, this, like 15.5, this is a tool that you can go and sign up for and check it out, poke around, you know, test it out with your team. Or just test it out with a couple managers, knowing that you may not necessarily want to roll this stuff out to everybody at the same time. So that's really the tools for, you know, HR and that side of the business. I'm just going to pop open the questions to see if there's any questions happening right now. Let me just find them here. I know I have to pop out. Please don't judge my my desktop here, but I can't look at the questions without finding this. Okay, let's just see if there's any questions at the bottom here. So we have, you know, how does Soapbox and 15.5 compare to Basecamp? So I'm not actually an avid user of Basecamp. To my knowledge, Basecamp is more so around project management. So I'm going to talk a little bit about project management tools in the next section. It may have some of these features embedded. And again, I think, you know, really the underlying functionality of these tools is what's important. You might already have your own tools that are doing exactly the job that these tools are doing, or you might have another one that you've heard about. That's totally fine. I think, you know, from the previous section, the thing that's important is that you have some sort of tool, HR tool, managing your employee onboarding and offboarding and giving you a way to automate things like time off requests. There are lots of tools like Bamboo that do similar things. It's not that you have to use Collage, it's more so find a tool that works for you. 15.5, you know, there's lots of tools that allow you to do weekly pulse surveys. You can even just use a Google form for that. But the idea behind it is make sure you're taking that pulse. And same with Soapbox. There are, you know, meeting agenda tools in other project management tools. And so you may not need to have a separate tool for that. And that's really the goal of this, is to sit down and assess all the things that you should have a tool for, whether that's an Excel spreadsheet or whether that's a digital tool like this. And you can kind of figure out which tool makes the most sense for you. And I do have a question here. Which of these are Canadian owned or woman owned and led? I will absolutely let you know. 15.5, to my knowledge, is based out in California. Soapbox and Collage are both Canadian owned. I believe they do not have female founders, but I will let you know when I get to tools that do. And I think we're vacation requests sync to Google Calendar and Collage? Yes, they do, which is great. You also have an employee birthdays calendar. If you've ever had the embarrassing moment of not knowing it was a new employee's birthday shortly after they started, you never have to deal with that again because it syncs the employee birthdays calendar and all time off. It doesn't show the reason for the time off. It just shows when someone's taking a sick day, which is nice because then you don't have to send a company-wide email saying I'm taking a sick day. It just automatically populates into the calendar. Can Collage be used for subcontractors? Absolutely. So you can have full employees, you can have contractors, you can assign your accounting contact to it. So it's not just necessarily for full-time employees. We also have our contractors on it, less so for things like booking time off since they're by the hour, but for things like, you know, onboarding, training, etc. Okay, so I should have the tools on the screen. If you're not seeing them there, let me know. Does Collage have TD1 forms for employees to fill out? I'm not 100% sure, but you can definitely chat with their team. Collage has excellent customer support. They have live chat on their website and they always get back to me really quickly. Same with 15.5, excellent customer support. I live chatted them with some questions after I was getting started and they got back to me right away. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next section. If I missed your question, it's just because I'm not scrolling all the way back up, but I can definitely answer them at the end when we get to the question period. So next I'm going to move to communication tools. So this is really key because, you know, you're not face-to-face in an office. I know for us, you know, we used to have a lot of those anecdotal conversations, you know, sitting in the office and saying, hey, can you do X, Y, Z, or can you provide me with X, Y, Z? And the goal of any sort of project management tool is, you know, cutting down on things getting lost and making sure there's accountability and keeping things organized. Those to us are really the three reasons that we invested in a project management tool. And I'll tell you why we like Asana. I've tried a bunch. I've tried Basecamp a long time ago. I've tried one called Flow, which is based in Vancouver. We've tried Trello in the past. And Asana, personally, I've used Todoist, which is a really great personal to-do list app. If you're looking for an app to help you build your grocery list, that one's great. Asana is the one that has really stuck with our team at Willful. So I'll walk you through a bit about it and then tell you why it's so sticky for us. So the reason that we like Asana is it creates visibility and accountability into what your team is working on. You know, I've had a lot of people on Twitter this week say that they're working at companies where their employer requires that they keep their webcam on all day, which seems pretty unnecessary to me. You know, if you are hiring really competent people and you're helping them set you know, metrics-driven goals and you're giving them accountability, there should be no question of whether your team members are actually working while they're at home, knowing that even when we're in an office, we're not spending 100% of the time on work. We're checking our social media channels and online shopping and things like that. So I would really urge you, if you are thinking you want to be the type of employer who mandates that their employees keep their webcams on, or you're trying to, you know, ensure that people are productive, try something like Asana as a way to know what's happening, what's getting done, and what the status of projects are. So it allows you to create, Asana allows you to create shared projects. So let's say, for example, a project is, you know, launched April marketing campaign. You can create a project, you can share the relevant team members on it. So you might have projects that are just for the marketing team, just for the finance team, just for the engineering team. And then only the people who are on those projects would actually see them. You can also add tasks. So within a project like, you know, launch marketing campaign, you can add a task like write monthly email newsletter. You can assign it to someone, you can add background details, set deadlines, have comments back and forth on requirements, and you can also add labels. So they can label it as in progress, you know, needs review from manager and approved. So at any given time, I can go into our Asana, I can go into any project and I can see what tasks are still, you know, not completed, when the deadlines are, who's responsible for it, and I can also see what's in progress versus not started yet, what might need my review. So I have a view in my own that says, Erin, please review for all of the things that I need to look at so that I'm not a bottleneck as a manager. And it's just a really easy way for me to know exactly what my team is working on, where the status of tasks are, and a way to capture things. As managers and leaders, we probably, if you're like me, you have a tendency to, you know, say, oh, can you handle X, Y, Z? And then that person might forget to actually capture that. Asana is great because it takes 2 seconds using their mobile app or using the web platform to add a task and assign it to someone, so you know it's documented, they're not going to forget about it, and you don't have to micromanage them by following up a million times. I also use it for my own private to-do lists, so you can create private projects on Asana. So let's say you're creating a finance project that you don't want, you know, any of the other team members to see. You can just add certain team members so that no one else can see it, or you can do what I've done and create a private to-do list. So I use Asana to keep track of everything I have to do on a daily basis. If it's not in Asana, personally or professionally, it does not get done. And you can divide up the actual task lists into a Kanban board where you see it organized by column, or you can just create sections. So I have sections for urgent today, needs to be done this week, not timely, personal tasks, etc. So I find it's great for personal organization as well as company-wide organization. The key to any project management platform is not the tool itself, it's stickiness. It's making sure that people are using it. So your biggest job as a leader is to ensure that if you implement something like this, you do the training and you really sit with people to help them understand why, and you are the one setting the behavior, adding tasks, following up on things. If someone asks you to do something, you say, add it to our project management tool. Stickiness is really the key here, and that's where I failed in past roles or with past platforms when we tried. It was just because people weren't using it, and any tool isn't effective if people aren't using it. This also might not be relevant for all of your teams. Our engineering team doesn't use Asana. They use a tool called Pivotal, which helps them to track feature requests and bugs and things like that. If, it may not make sense for every single team at your company to be using this. What I also really like about Asana is that it integrates with Slack and a lot of other tools. So if I'm chatting with a team member in Slack and I say, oh, can you do XYZ? I can easily from within Slack or any other communications tool create a task directly without leaving my conversation. So that's just a nice to have. Asana is not, I believe, a Canadian company. But if you are trying to support Canadian, check out a tool called Flow, which is based in Vancouver, and that's an alternative project management platform. And I already talked about the key there. I didn't include the websites here. We probably all are familiar with Zoom and Google Meet. We're probably all using them. I'm not going to talk about the value of FaceTime, but I'm going to talk about a few things that I think are key during COVID specifically around hosting video meetings. I think it's important to not only have FaceTime with your team members around meetings, but also to have non-work related FaceTime. You're not getting in a room, to have a drink on a Friday afternoon or going on team outings right now. So that face-to-face contact, it's not having meetings for the sake of meetings, but finding ways to have FaceTime with your team to just let them hang out and have human interaction is really key right now. And that's why we're all having a million Zoom meetings with our friends and family. I actually feel busier in my social life than I did before this, because I'm connecting with friends and family across Canada on Zoom every night. Obviously, it's an excellent tool for hosting client meetings or client presentations. So if you are working with clients, it's a really easy way to mimic that face-to-face interaction. There's screen share, you have organizer tools, and if you're someone who used to do in-person events, this webinar is a great example of how you can host a really seamless online event. So that might be a way to move something you were doing offline online during this time. And I've actually found that we use Google Meet internally most of the time at Willful, and it's been such a great boon for company culture during this time. I mean, again, we're not, for the 34% of you who were already leading a remote team, you probably already have your rituals for staying connected and maintaining positive company culture virtually. For the 65% of people who are new to this, you're probably like me. You're used to having a weekly happy hour or doing monthly team outings to go axe throwing and, weekly touch bases where you can just have lunch together. That's not possible these days, but you can still replicate that virtually. So one thing that we do every Friday at 4 p.m., we have a virtual happy hour where we all have our, alcoholic or non-alcoholic beverage of choice. We catch up on the week, we share what's interesting from our personal lives that week, and we play a game. We use a tool called Jackbox Games, which allows your employees to actually connect via their smartphone. You as the game organizer download an app, and then you can just screen share that app. Everyone connects from their phone. They have about 10 to 15 different games. My favorites are Quiplash and Murder Trivia Party, which sounds sinister but is very fun. So you can try doing that, or you can just do virtual trivia. I have a Trivial Pursuit game here. So a couple weeks ago, I just was Trivia Master, and we gave out prizes of Uber Eats credits so that our team members could actually, order from local restaurants and support local during this time. We also do weekly lunch hangouts. So it's not mandatory, but we'll, put it in the calendar, and anyone who wants to have lunch together that day can just pop in. And another great thing to suggest for your team is to host virtual co-working. So if you have folks that are feeling really lonely right now because they're working remotely for the first time, suggest that they buddy up with a coworker, just put their screens on, their camera on, and they can just kind of chit chat as they go through their work. I would not recommend mandating that though. And again, you know, kids and pets are a thing. No one on our team has school-age children, but we do have someone with a toddler, and pets and kids make it really difficult for people to always put on their video. So, you know, don't make always on video mandatory. If you do want to have a video meeting with people, let them know that you're expecting that they join via video so that they personally can be prepared for it, because a lot of people are working in their pajamas right now. The next communications tool is Slack. I'm not sure how many people are familiar with it. I've been working in the tech startup space for a long time, and so for me, Slack is really ubiquitous. It's something that a lot of folks in the tech space use, but I'm noticing that it's now kind of going beyond those borders, and a lot of other folks are using it as well. So Slack is a communications tool. It allows you to almost instant chat. For anybody who remembers ICQ or MSN Messenger, it's like that on steroids. You might be familiar with Microsoft Teams, very similar tool. So anything I say about this applies to Microsoft Teams or any other, you know, instant chat app for Teams. The thing I love about Slack is that it's kind of the virtual heartbeat of your company. It allows you to create channels, conversation channels around topics. So those topics could be work related. For example, we have channels for marketing and engineering, and you know, we have a team channel where I can share company-wide announcements. But we also have non-work related channels, which are really popular. We have a meme channel, which is full of COVID memes right now. We have a book channel, a foodies channel, where everyone is sharing photos of the sourdough bread they're baking at this time. And I actually find that those non-work related channels can often be more vibrant and busy than the work channels. It's a great way, again, to keep that virtual culture going. And in my experience, Slack has virtually eliminated internal emails. So, you know, anytime I'm communicating with a team member, I honestly can't remember the last time I sent an internal email to our team, maybe to welcome a new team member and so that everyone knew their email address. But other than that, all of our team communication happens via Slack, which is pretty incredible when I think about, you know, 5 years ago and the fact that all team communication was happening via email. And I like that Slack also, similar to Microsoft Teams, has a ton of integrations. So you can, you know, create tasks in Asana. You can integrate with cloud storage platforms like Dropbox or Google Drive. So it just makes it easy to pull things in and integrate with the other tools in your toolkit. One thing I would highlight is to be cognizant of sending Slack messages outside of work hours. This is really something that we have to watch, especially during remote working. As leaders, we're probably always working beyond work hours, and this is probably even more true during this time. So Slack has a drafts feature similar to email drafts that allows you to compose messages and send them at a later time. So I would really urge you, both with emails and with Slack messages, to be cognizant of not sending them outside of work hours unless absolutely necessary, because you really set the example for that as a leader. That also goes for scheduling meetings over things like lunch. A lot of folks are, you know, complaining on Twitter that everyone's setting meetings for noon when, you know, they would have a lunch break if they were in the office, so they should have that if they're at home. And Slack is Canadian owned, so good thing to note there. Google Meet and Zoom are definitely not Canadian owned, but Slack is. It's founded by Stuart Butterfield out in Vancouver, and he's done very well with it. And then finally, for communication, again, we're probably all already using one of these tools, but Dropbox and Google Drive. Or any cloud storage solution, sync.com, Box. I mean, there are a million of these. The point isn't which tool you use. The point is that you are using cloud-based tools to store your files. And really, this is key because you don't want people storing your work product on their local machines, even if that's a work machine. When I ran an agency, our office was robbed, and all of everyone's machines was stolen. And yes, it was really easy to replicate and replace the tech, but if we hadn't used a cloud storage service that had all of our files saved to it, we would have lost all of that work. So maybe one of your employees' computers crashes. Maybe, like happened to one of my team members last week, they pour a mug of coffee on their computer accidentally and they have to get a new one. You don't want that to be the reason that you're losing a ton of files. So definitely set up some sort of cloud file storage and sharing system if you don't have one already. If you do have one, answer this question: is it organized? I'm gonna guess probably not. I spent a bunch of time organizing Willful's Google Drive folders, and I feel so much better about life now. You know, I have a master folder, I have numbered folders that are for each team. So, you know, marketing, leadership, finance, all of those folders are shared and have version controls with the correct people. So only the people who need to be on those folders are shared on them. And we also have a naming convention for files and folders, so that in those folders, everything's organized really well. Now, obviously, this is something that gets disorganized, so we also put aside time every 3 to 6 months to go through, rename things, put things into folders, delete things, and it's just good to have a policy around that stuff anyways. So even if you are storing stuff in the cloud, try to keep it organized this way. And permission controls, this is important. You want to make sure that your team members have access to everything they need, but not access to anything and everything at the company. So definitely make sure you're only sharing them on folders that they should have access to, and you're reviewing the sensitive information in your cloud storage files to make sure that only you or the other key people have access to that. And really make sure that you're sharing. You know, sometimes I find people are working on Google Docs that aren't in our shared folders, they're just on their own personal drive. Everything that people are working on should be saved to or located in that shared environment, so that if anything happens, you still have access to those documents. Okay, so that's the section on kind of team communication and project management. I'm going to answer a couple questions now before moving on to the next section. I apologize if I don't get to your question, but hopefully I can get to most of them. So with Google Drive, how is it managed when people add new items? I find I have to look through all the folders to find new additions. So you can see the recently added button in the left-hand side, and that allows you to organize your drive by all of the most recent things that have been added. But to my point earlier about organization, you know, I don't see a reason you would have to see every single document that's being added. It's more so knowing that it's going into the right place, so you know where to look for it. I don't need to see every new document that's created in Google Drive. My employees can take care of creating their work product and sharing me on it when it's relevant. It's more so about having that organizational system, but you absolutely can go to recently added in the menu. And if you're having trouble with that, you can just Google how to see recent, you know, uploads in Google Drive. Cloud storage sites that are more secure than others, that's a great question. You know, I think there's a tool, actually a Canadian tool called sync.com, sync.com, that's built for enterprise, that has security at the forefront. But tools like Dropbox and Box are widely considered to have, you know, great security practices. I know Dropbox did have a breach a while ago. That's always a danger. I don't think there's any company that's impervious to that. But if you're really concerned about security or you're dealing with sensitive information, you can definitely check out a tool like sync.com that might have more of a focus on that. So if you're using Outlook already, if you're using Outlook for your email, why have another communication system like Slack? So Slack is really designed to eliminate email. The idea is that you can just save actually sending an email by sending a Slack message, and it also doesn't just work with your internal team. For example, we have a PR agency, and you can add people from outside your company to very specific channels. So they don't have to see all of the channels that you might have created in your instant communications tool, but we can add them in. And then instead of them having to send us an email every time they have a question and filling out my inbox, they can just throw it into that channel. I get a notification, I can respond in line with it. To me, it tends to save time. It saves emails clogging up in your system. And yes, you do have to check 2 different platforms, but you know the purpose of them. You know that Slack is for your internal communication and email is for your external communication with partners or vendors or clients. And I can honestly say it streamlines everything so that you know exactly where you're looking for both of those things. And again, this is just a recommendation on a tool that could work. You don't have to use any of these if you find that your current situation is working for you. Someone said they found Microsoft Teams and Slack expensive. There is a free trial, and once you get over a certain number of users or certain number of messages, it does cost money. For 9 of us at Willful, I think we're paying less than $100 Canadian a month for access to Slack. I would say it's worth every penny for the organization and the time that it saves us. But again, if it's something that you don't want to pay for, you can either search out free options or you can stick to email. The name of the game app is Jackbox, Jackbox Games. They actually have a free version of one of their games right now because of COVID and because they know that people are playing this a lot. So check out their website. I love it, and we play those games often, both as a team and personally. Someone said they own an axe throwing business. Well, I love axe throwing, and I will be right back at your location as soon as we're allowed to. Virtual axe throwing would actually be kind of fun. How is Google Meet different from Google Hangouts? Google Meet is Google Hangouts. Google Hangouts was rebranded to Google Meet, so there is no difference between those tools. Can I get a copy of your slides? Absolutely. We're sending out the 1-pager. I'm not sure if they're going to be sending out the slides, but the 1-pager is actually more like 3 or 4 pages, and it has all of the details that I talked about today, and actually more detail than the slides have. And have I ever used Planner by Microsoft? I have not. I would say that I am firmly someone who lives in the Google ecosystem. I use Gmail, Google Calendar, all of that kind of stuff. So I have not, but I'm sure that it could be a great tool as well. And can you assign project managers to projects so the PM must maintain their own projects for something like Asana? For sure. So for example, our CMO, Santa, she's in charge of all of the projects under the marketing banner. She reviews them weekly. She, gets rid of irrelevant tasks. She checks on the status of things, and she is kind of the owner of those projects. So I'm not sure if that's assigned through Asana or more something that we just kind of, communicated. But yes, you can definitely have an owner. Someone asked about whether things are an app. Most of the tools I've talked about have mobile apps. Google Meet has one, Asana, all of the tools that I've talked about, I think, have mobile versions. So I can't think of one that doesn't have a mobile app for you to use it. The difference between Trello, Monday, and Asana, again, they're just different project management tools. They all have the basic functionality of creating projects and assigning tasks and tracking due dates and communicating with team members about those things in the comments. I've never used Monday. I have used Trello. I find Trello is great in, for some situations. I love that you can create cards for each task, but I found Asana just suits teams that have a lot of moving pieces, and I found it much more helpful for my own personal task list. Okay, I'm going to continue on to the next section, just knowing that some people will likely have to hop off at 2, and I want to make sure I get through all of this. The next tool I'm going to talk about is Receipt Bank. If you're on this webinar, you're probably a QuickBooks customer. We are at Willful, and that's great for managing all of our finances. Luckily, we have an external accounting firm at First CFO that helps us with all of that. But for employee expenses and expense reports, Receipt Bank is my absolute favorite tool. I don't believe it's Canadian, but I love it nonetheless. It's a simple receipt tracking and expensing app. For any of you who are accountants on the line, you're probably familiar with it. It's super simple. You have a mobile app, you snap a photo of a hard copy receipt, and you submit it, and it automatically tracks whether it was purchased on a company card or a personal card. If you bought something online, you just have a unique email address that you forward any digital receipts to. And Bob's your uncle, you've submitted a receipt in about 2 seconds, and as soon as you capture it, you can recycle the hard copies instead of having that big pile of receipts on your desk. Employees can create their own expense reports. So, they can go in and knowing they paid for something on their own personal card, they can create and submit expense reports, or you can do that for them. And you can also create a lot of expense tracking using Receipt Bank. So, for example, when I was running my agency, we would have, codes or categories for clients so that if we wanted to bill back an expense to a client, when they were submitting a receipt, the employee would just select that client, and then our accounting team would know, okay, that needs to be billed back to XYZ. You can also use it not for bill backs, but just to categorize things internally. So, you can create different categories like meals and entertainment, or, marketing. And then when you submit a receipt, you can select that category so that it's easier for you to map to your chart of accounts in QuickBooks. So we have categories in Receipt Bank that match to the chart of accounts. And then our accounting team doesn't have to say, hey, what should this be categorized under? Is this, meals and entertainment, or is this, client appreciation? So it's really easy to do that. There are other tools like Wave in Canada, the Canadian tool that does a really great job of this as well. They also have tools like Payroll. That's Receipt Bank, super simple. Another Canadian tool here is WagePoint. WagePoint is a payroll provider. You might be asking, everyone has a payroll provider, whether you're remote or not. Why are you talking about a payroll provider? But I will get to that. So WagePoint is a Canadian-made payroll platform that we use at Willful. It allows, I find they have amazing customer service. One of the biggest benefits of WagePoint is that anytime I have a question, they email me back within 10 minutes, and they're always fantastic about helping out. I like WagePoint because, employees can log in, change their banking details. It doesn't require any administration from me. They can view their pay stubs at any time. They can get all of their, record of employment and all of that kind of stuff directly through the platform. So it cuts down on a lot of employee communication with you or with your HR team if you're big enough to have one. The thing I love about them, another typo on here, sorry guys. Their team is really staying on top of all of the COVID benefits from the Canadian government. So, the 10% payroll exemption, this CERB benefits, they're sending out proactive communications on a weekly basis, and they're adjusting their platform to be able to support all of those grants automatically so that you don't have to worry that you're not staying on top of things, and so that you or your accounting team can easily process your payroll with all of those changes included. So as a business owner who's been trying to stay on top of and navigate this new, all of these new benefits, it's been really helpful to have their team send out all of these proactive communications. Again, WagePoint is just one of a million payroll providers, but I like that they're Toronto-based, great customer service, and they're really providing value through COVID. If you take one thing away from this presentation today, other than the fact that Jackbox games are very fun, it's that you and your team should be using a password management platform. This is something that I would probably venture a guess 90% of companies don't do, and it's probably the easiest thing to put in place to ensure that you don't have data breaches at your company and that all of your passwords are secure. 1Password is a Canadian company, and I absolutely love them. And so 1Password is a centralized password platform. So right now you probably have passwords to a million different apps for your business and also personally. And if you're like I used to be, you would constantly forget them. You would save them in your browser so that you could just automatically enter them every time you went to a site. And if you're like me as a business owner, you would have to change all of your passwords when someone left or joined and really worry about who has access to what. I mean, we even had a Google spreadsheet with all of our passwords on it, which is a big no-no. That means anyone who has access to your email can unlock the key to all of your company's accounts. 1Password solves for all of that. It allows you to create one master password, and that's the only thing you have to remember. So whether you're using it for personal reasons or professional, you create that master password, which should be, best practice is a series of 4 random words like mug, watch, umbrella, lamp. that's proven to be the most secure password possible is a random series of 4 words. It actually takes a bit to get to remember it, but now my 4 random words are ingrained in my brain. And then you load in all of your logins, your accounts and passwords, even things like confidential information. Our security code for our office is in there, maybe a company credit card that might be shared in a spreadsheet right now. You load all of those into into 1Password, sorry. And then you can create vaults. So again, not everybody needs to have access to all of your company's passwords. So you can create vaults around teams. I have one for the finance team where only my accountant and I have access to it. There's one for the marketing team where they have email marketing tools and our customer support platform. The engineering team has one. And only tools that are relevant to that team are stored within that vault, and only people who need access to those tools specifically are shared on those vaults. You can also create private vaults where you can, keep any of your own personal company accounts that don't need to be shared with anyone else. Maybe, your email, your work email, or any other individual accounts. And again, you just have to remember your own personal master password. Then you log in and you can see all of those passwords. It has a Chrome extension so that you can actually just click it in your browser and it auto-fills your passwords into a site so that you don't have to, open it up and log in. It also has a mobile app with, facial recognition so that you can easily log in from mobile. And I found it makes me feel so much more secure as a company knowing that we have this, and it creates access control. When someone joins the company, you invite them to 1Password, you share them on only the vaults that are relevant for them, and when they leave the company, you remove them from the vault. No need to go in and change passwords or anything like that, because they never actually knew the password to that actual site. They only know the actual master password that they've created for themselves, which is great. So that's 1Password. I'm very passionate about them, and my sales pitch is it will save you from password reset emails. Personally and professionally, I have a personal vault that I share with my husband as well, and I track all of my personal stuff there, so it's great. One tip, if you're using 1Password, make sure you go into your browser where you have all of those saved passwords. Same with on your mobile device where it stores it on your mobile device, and delete all of those. 1Password doesn't work if you still have all of your login information saved in all of those browser history or mobile settings. And this will take you a good day to go through and, set up 1Password, set up the vaults, go through and delete all, change all your passwords to secure passwords. That's what you should be doing as well, not just loading in the accounts, but changing them to secure passwords. 1Password has a password generator, so you don't have to worry about that. It'll take you a good day, but it's the perfect project to take care of right now. And whether you're remote or not, it's going to be really helpful long term. The final tool that I wanted to go through as we approach the end here is Founded. Founded is Toronto-based, founded by an amazing guy named Derek, and it is the perfect place to share and store all of your legal documents. So Founded is really a secret weapon for augmenting or replacing your legal team at your company. They allow you to upload and organize your minute book. So everything from your incorporation documents to your shareholders agreements to bylaws, anything else, you can store really beautifully in Founded, so they're all in one place. You can also manage your cap table. If you're a company like ours that has external investors, you can manage your shareholders agreements, your cap tables. You can create employee stock option plans and agreements with Founded. You can create employment agreements, which is really key. And you can send things out for e-signature. So it's all kind of contained within this one platform. And they also have a tool to incorporate or register your business. So if you're a new aspiring entrepreneur, you can actually go on and take care of the incorporation and registration directly through Founded. They do have a monthly fee. I think it's $1.99. I could be wrong. It's not, the cheapest thing out there, but it's also, less than 1 hour of a lawyer's time. We actually use it in tandem with our law firm. So we use Blake's, love them. They actually pay for Founded and allow us to have access through the law firm. So even if you do work with a law firm, you should ask them to get on Founded, because it's a great way for your law firm and you to manage things together. And if you don't have a law firm, Founded is a really great tool, and definitely recommend that you check it out. So final tips for running a remote team during COVID, and then I'll get to questions, and I'll stay on a few minutes extra in case anyone has them. You can also ask me questions on Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram. I'm at Erin Bury, ERINBURY, on any of those channels. So first tip for running a remote team: set metrics-driven goals to create accountability versus micromanaging or always requiring always-on video. If you hire smart people and you create goals that have, very clear metrics for success, and you put systems in place like project management tools that have accountability baked into them, there's no reason that you shouldn't be trusting that people are working when they're working from home. Build an environment where you trust your team members and let them flourish in that. And I think for us, it's been really successful so far to have OKRs. We use a goal setting system called OKRs, and you can just Google that. There's a lot of background and tools. If you're looking for a great book on goal setting frameworks, I suggest Measure What Matters by John Doerr. Measure What Matters. It's a great book on the goal setting system called OKRs. Second is create regular check-ins, and not just on how team members are doing professionally, but also personally. This is a time that is, I hate to use this overused word, but it's unprecedented, and your team members are going to be reacting to it differently, and they're going to feel different on a Monday versus a Wednesday versus a Friday. So having regular team touch points, letting people know and being transparent about your own struggles with adapting to this or working from home with kids is going to be the best way to show compassion during this time. Provide tools and resources on that note to help people with their mental health. So if you do have, anxiety reduction tools that you've come across, or mindfulness apps, any articles that you come across, or webinars that are being hosted, share those with your team. Show them that you really care about their mental health and this is a weird time. At Willful, we've also topped up people's therapy budget. I mean, we have a team of 9, so it's not a huge budget investment for us, but we want to make sure that people know that if they need to get professional help, they should get it. So if you have an employee assistance plan on your benefits, highlight that. If you are able to top up people's therapy budget, knowing that typical paramedicals doesn't go too far, do that. But if you can't do any of that, share resources and tips. Let them know it's okay to feel anxious, and just be a compassionate leader during this time. I already mentioned this, but be thoughtful about when you're booking meetings, when you're sending updates. This might mean that you're working from home 24/7. I know it certainly does for me, but your team members still have lives outside of work. They have kids, pets, spouses, family Zoom calls that they have to get to. So just be thoughtful about when you're sending these things. And finally, I can't stress this enough, err on the side of being compassionate and understanding, even if that means that productivity goes down 5 or 10% during this time. Employees are going to remember forever how employers treated them during this time, and that's really going to help you build a reputation as a company that cares about their team members and that's there for them during a really hard time. And I know as business owners, this is also an extremely stressful time for us as well. How are we going to make this work? How am I going to meet payroll? How am I going to pivot and readjust? And I would just highlight that your team members are there with you. They're also stressed out. Be transparent. If you know that you have to lay them off, do it in a really thoughtful, kind way, and be transparent about everything that's happening and the way that you're feeling, because they'll really appreciate it. So that's the end. Oh, sorry, I wanted to mention as well. These are a couple screenshots of what happens if you are not the type of leader that I just mentioned. Talk to a friend today and her company's finally allowing them to work from home, but they must have their webcams on. Yikes, do you have to do this? Someone saying they got laid off with 400 employees by dialing into a Zoom message. Their manager never even called them to say goodbye. The virus may be out of control, but how humanely you handle it is not. Same with the people at this co-working space who found out that they were laid off from a media article. So these are the types of people that we do not want to be, and hopefully these tools really help you to be that compassionate, effective leader during this time. So that's the presentation. There's my email if you want to send me a note. I'm going to go through a few more questions now because I know that we're just at 2. If you have to head off, thank you so much for attending. Thank you, QuickBooks, for organizing this and for having me. I hope you got something useful out of it. You will be getting the one-pager that I mentioned with all of these tools and those tips in your inbox from the QuickBooks team. And I wish you all the best with your businesses through this very weird time. For those of you who can stay on, we still have 487 of you. Thank you for staying here with us. I'm going to go down to the bottom here and just tackle all of the comments that are here. Thank you, Jean and Mary, for your comments about the presentation, and Robert, I really appreciate it. Barry is asking, can you recommend an app to move data from a website to populate vendor purchase orders and customer sales orders into QuickBooks? I do not know that. Check out a tool called commonsku, C-O-M-M-O-N-S-K-U. That might be a good place to start. And I would suggest reaching out to the QuickBooks team. They probably have a better idea of software integrations and tools than I do, just knowing that this is not something that we deal with. So I would suggest chatting with them. Which project management software do I recommend? I joined late, welcome late, and I recommended Asana, and it's going to be in the one-pager that I'm sending out, but you can also check out Trello, Basecamp, Monday, and Flow. There are quite a few project management tools out there. HubDoc versus Receipt Bank. I've actually never used HubDoc. I know they're a Toronto-based company, and I've heard really great things about them. Anyone I didn't mention here, it wasn't intentional. There are so many great alternatives to the tools I did mention. So it's really just because we had Receipt Bank recommended to us from an accounting firm that we were working with in Toronto. Once you get hooked on a tool and you're used to it, you tend to use it at the next company you go to. So I can't actually speak to the difference between HubDoc. There's definitely alternatives to password managers as well. LastPass is another one. I just like 1Password because they're Canadian, and I like supporting local whenever I can. Cost for 1Password, I believe we pay about $10 a person to have access to it. So again, it's just about $100 a month for a 9-person team. And you know, to be honest, we're probably paying anywhere from $500 to $1,000 a month total for all of our software tools, but the organization that they give us is by far worth it. And a lot of these have free trials, period. Some of them are giving their tools away like $15.5 for free right now, so definitely worth looking into. The cost of 1Password is monthly. It's not a license, it's a subscription. When you get a professional subscription, you also get access to your personal vault, which is great. So we pay for the willful 1Password, but then I, as Erin Bury, get my own family vault. So each of your employees gets this value add of having their own family vault, and if they ever left the company, they would just take that family vault with them. So thank you so much for the person who said that they've been doing a webinar a day and that mine was great. I appreciate that. Hopefully it was helpful. And you said you had a bunch of questions. Find me anywhere on the internet. I'm always happy to help. Someone said they're wary of master passwords stored online. You know, I totally get that. The concern of, well, if I store everything in one place and that site gets hacked, what happens? My thoughts on that are, if you create a tough enough master password that's very, very difficult, if not impossible, for people to crack, if you don't tell anyone that master password, I mean, I run an online will company. My suggestion is print out your master password. 1Password allows you to print out a sheet that has your secret keys and your master password. Store that with your will wherever you're storing it securely, so your executor actually has access to that. But you know, 1Password, sure, are they more likely than others to be a target? Yes, but knowing they're storing the internet's passwords, are they probably taking a million more measures than, you know, an individual software provider to prevent any sort of hacks? I would imagine yes. I have not done a deep dive into their security practices though. I would just say they've been around for, I think, 10 to 15 years. and I don't think there's ever been a breach, so that gives me a lot of confidence. Let's just see here. Okay, I have about 6 more minutes. The webinar is being recorded. I don't know if it's going to be shared after, but I do know that the one pager that I wrote will be there. I also had a recommendation for another payroll management program, Humi, HUMI.com. Also another great tool. I know the founders, so definitely worth checking that one out as well. Receipt Bank is apparently now owned by Xero and has glitches. So alternatives that are being suggested, that's not my words, that's someone in the chat. Expensify is a great tool. Wave has a receipts app. Sensibill is another Toronto-based company that has receipt tracking. All of those are great options to check out as well. Receipt Bank does not replace bookkeeping. It only tracks your employee expenses and allows them to make expense reports. In terms of which cloud storage tool is good for accountants, I mean, it kind of depends on if you use Gmail. I use Gmail and Google Calendar for my email and my calendar system. Google Drive makes a ton of sense just to stay in the same ecosystem. If you're using Outlook and you don't use any other Google tools, Dropbox is probably a great tool for you. It depends on whether you want to be able to work on documents directly in something like Google Drive and store them. Dropbox is more they do allow you to actually work on documents locally and store them, but we mostly just use it for things that we're sharing externally, whereas we use Google Drive to share documents internally and work on them. And yes, you can screen share with Google Meet. So Ramon, if you're still here, you can definitely screenshot. Okay, so I think there's a lot of similar questions in here. Slack is not similar to Salesforce. Salesforce is a CRM tool. It allows you to track leads and your pipeline, whereas Slack is about instant communication with your team. And if you use Microsoft Teams, it can integrate with Outlook. That's a really great tip for anyone who's using Outlook for your email provider and you want to use Microsoft Teams. What does Asana do that Trello doesn't? You know, I'm not sure exactly what it does that Trello doesn't. Trello is really all about the cards and the kind of Kanban board, whereas Asana is, I think, a little bit more robust in giving you kind of a side menu. So with Trello, you can create a board. So the board might be marketing, but with Asana, you can actually create, you know, teams. So you can create marketing, you know, growth, finance, and then you can create sub projects. Versus Trello, which I find is great if you're working on one shared board, but it's harder to see all of the individual projects, at least in my experience. But they are pretty similar in terms of their functionality. Okay, I think that's about it. I'm going to say thank you to the QuickBooks team again. If I didn't get to your question, I apologize. I scrolled up as much as I could from the bottom at the end of each section, but hopefully the one pager that will be sent out helps. If it doesn't answer the question that you have, feel free to reach out, and also feel free to reach out to the QuickBooks team. They have a ton of info on tools that sync and support with them, support their tool. And as QuickBooks users ourselves, they are a great wealth of knowledge. So thank you all for joining today, and I hope that you all have great health and happiness and safety during this time, both personally and for your business. Thanks so much and have a great day. And now I just have to figure out how to stop this, Brittany.